Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited about our conversation with Mohammed Zakaria today. As a kid who grew up skating, I've been waiting to do a skateboard culture event on afikra for a long time, so I'm really excited about this. Mohammed is a photographer. He's the founder of Philadelphia Skateboards and the co-founder of Seven Hills Skatepark in Amman. Welcome, Mohammed, to Afikra Conversations.
Shukran. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I guess the easiest way to start would be a little biographical. Can you sort of walk us through where you grew up, how you became interested in skateboarding, and when you first started skating?
Okay, this is okay. So I was born in Doha, Qatar, and this is where I grew up for a little bit, and then we moved to Amman. But then the story of me and skateboarding goes back to Doha. And on my 10th birthday, I got a skateboard as a gift and as a birthday present. And so ever since, I've always had this interest in skateboarding, but I never really knew what to do. And so by the age of 16, we got the internet and I found out you can do tricks. And from there I was like, yeah, that's it, man. This is what I want to do. And from there, like, things just started happening.
So I think we're about the same age. So that means like mid 90s, you realize, or late 90s, you realize, okay, great. There are such things as skaters and there is a skateboard culture and I can ollie and I can do that. But were you just practicing in your driveway, so to speak?
Yeah. This is how it started, actually. Like I remember that I used to buy a skateboard like every couple of years, like before I even knew I was able to do tricks with it. I was just like buy a skateboard and just like, go around with it in my backyard or on the streets. And like, some kids would have bikes, I would have a skateboard. And then by the age of 16, when I found out you can do tricks, that was like a mind-opening experience, man. It's like, whoa, you can do all this stuff with the skateboard. And so I started skating in our garage in Amman. I was living in an apartment building and we had a garage and I used to skate there. And of course the neighbors weren't very happy. But then I used to skate all by myself back in the day. And it is an individual sport, but then you do need like people around you to skate. Yeah. So it's not really that individual. I mean, like, being in a crew is a big part of skateboarding. And so I was really desperate to find people to skate with. And what I used to do is to go on like chat rooms and have like nicknames related to skateboarding.
IRC?
Yeah. We had IRC. You had IRC as well? You're on IRC?
Yeah, that's how I found my skaters in Cyprus.
Oh, yeah? But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. So I had nicknames related to skateboarding, just hoping someone would notice, and then it happened. Like someone got in touch with me. He's like, "Yo, man, do you skate? I skate as well." Of course, at that point, none of us really skated,
Yeah.
And so we met up, and then we started skating in his backyard. And then afterwards, we started like moving out into the city and looking for street spots. And from there, we found, actually, there's like the main spot in Amman is Shara al-Thaqafi, Culture Street. And back in the day, like when I first started skating, it wasn't there. And so we used to go to like Burger King to skate in the parking lot of Burger King. They built Shara al-Thaqafi, which is like, a huge thing for us. It still is, actually. It's like, a big marble, like a big pedestrian plaza. It was like, fully everything marble. You had benches, you had stairs, you had ledges, you had everything you can ask for. And so we started skating there. And slowly there was like, people started noticing skaters there. And then suddenly there was like a bunch, at one point it was like, at any given day you would go to Shara al-Thaqafi, there would be 20 skaters there after, I think, a year or two.
This is in the early 2000s at this point?
I would say 2003, I think. It was right after the Iraq War that a lot of the expats moved to Amman. And from there was like a small expat / local skate community. And then from there, more and more kids joined. And then there was also there was a Red Bull competition that happened that also helped the skate scene get together. It was a skateboarding scene. It was a skateboarding competition. And And from there, it's just, it just happened. The skate scene just happened there. In Sharm el-Thaqafi.
Yeah, so I want to talk. So I was reading this paper about you, right? And I'm going to quote the paper. It said, according to Muhammad, the understanding of non-conformity among the skaters was radically different from that of the public. The public disdain for skateboarding was seen as a result of an incomprehension and ignorance that equated non-conformity with vandalism and nuisance. So,
which article is that?
There's some like academic paper about you guys. But then it continues to say, on the other hand, Amman skaters primarily saw their nonconformity in pursuing an unconventional creative activity that differentiated themselves from a uniform mass. Were you aware of that at the time? Were you aware of that we're a bunch of misfits from all over Jordan, sort of these outcasts, and this is a way for us to create a subculture? Did it feel like that at the time?
Not really. It was just like, we just want to skate, man. And there was no agenda at all, like behind anything we were doing. It's just like a group of kids who had nothing to do, and then they found this perfect place to do something they love to do. And so it kind of, organically happened. We really didn't have an idea about what was going on at the time. And the thing is, like, thinking back on it, Amman is back in the day, it was really there wasn't much to do if you're like if you're a young boy, there's or a girl, if you're young, there's not much activities that are happening in Amman. It was kind of a boring city, and so having skateboarding for me at the time was really a lifesaver, because otherwise I don't know what I would be doing. And so it was, of course, I see the point of like the non-conformity, for looking at it from like an outsider's perspective. It's like, a bunch of kids, who are skating Sharm el-Thaqafi, and it's really not making any sense. You're throwing yourself down like, sets of stairs, and you're hurting yourself, and like, what are you doing, man? Like the other day I was skating with my friends, and I tried to have that look on like skaters, like, skaters do seem crazy, and like, why would you hurt yourself so much to land a trick? So I get the point for looking at it from an outsider's point of view, but then once you're like inside of skateboarding, it's really interesting, man. It's really interesting to observe. There's a lot of politics actually that goes on, like between the skaters themselves and the space, and the way also the space is redeveloped and reshaped through skateboarding. You see, like the whole city is, if you skate, the whole city is turned into something else, like the pavements and like the handrails and everything is transformed into something that carries potentiality for something that wasn't intended for in the first place. So for example, if you look at a bench, it's designed for people to sit on it, but then skateboarding comes and it's like, no, let's invent a new use for this bench. And so from there on, like if you take this philosophy and then you apply it to the entire city, it's like, it's really it's an endless potentiality everywhere, really.
Did you, in the early 2000s, like I know in Lebanon and in Cyprus, there was a huge resistance, public resistance to skating, right? It wasn't embraced. There wasn't like urban planners saying, "Oh my God, how do we cultivate more of this?" Right? There wasn't a public discourse saying, "Oh, this is this free outlet of creativity and activity and athleticism that we should embrace." Was it the same in Amman as well, or was it?
I mean, I think
did people embrace it?
We had a lot of problems with many groups of people. So first of all, you have the architects and the engineers of Culture Street, and of course they weren't happy about us. From their perspective, we were destroying the place because we were skating the benches and the stairs and stuff like that. So that's one group that wasn't very happy with us. And there was the actual users of the space who also were like, I mean, some of them were intrigued by what we were doing, but then some of them saw it as maybe a foreign thing that's being brought into a Jordanian context, and so maybe they had to battle it a little bit. But then, having nowhere else to go, we just kept coming back, and so eventually people accepted it, and even the engineers, like they had no other choice. I mean, we're going to keep coming back. Like, we'd always get kicked out, and then we'd come back the next day, because what else are we going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to skip ahead a little bit, a few years later, because one of the biggest frustrations of any young skater is that your boards break and you can't get gear and you can't get shoes, especially skaters from the third world and developing world. Pre-internet, you're constantly ripping up your shoes, you're constantly breaking your boards, your trucks are messed up, you need new wheels, you need new bearings, and it's a pain in the ass to get all of that stuff, right? So in 2009, is that right?
Yeah.
2009, you decide to create Philadelphia Skateboards. And its claim to fame is, if I remember, is that you wanted to manufacture the full board in Jordan, the first skateboard company to manufacture in the Arab world. Is that right?
Not really. I mean, the idea was to create like an Arab skate brand. At the time, of course, the idea is there to manufacture locally, but then it's a challenge because you have to learn all these techniques and stuff like that. So to kickstart the brand, we had to manufacture in Canada, which is because also like one of the things from back in the day is that if you had an Arabic brand, people already have this distrust in it. It's like, oh, is it going to be good quality? I don't know, and stuff like that. And so I opted for the choice of manufacturing in Canada, which is like, you know, the best. So skateboards are made of maple, and the best source of maple in the world is Canada. And so we thought, I want to go for quality wood and manufacture quality skateboards in order to make, to create a solid brand. And then from there, once we got to a point where we're able to have a little R&D and like develop boards locally. Unfortunately, we haven't got to that point yet. But the idea is there. But initially, the idea was to start an Arabic skateboard brand with really high quality, and like I would work with local artists, Jordanian artists or Arab artists, and then have graphics that are somewhat from the region, from the Arab world, like that would speak to the identity of the Arab skaters.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, man. Like the way we started in 2009. That was the first shipment that came to Jordan straight ahead. Like the first shipment we got, that we had orders in Beirut, and then the second shipment we got orders in Beirut and in Dubai, and then from there we went to Egypt and Morocco. And so it was really cool the way that the skate scene kind of embraced the skate brand. Because it's kind of a small skate scene. Back in the day, it was really, the word spread out really quickly, and the product was accepted and supported, and the brand was supported really. And it's really cool to see people skating your brand, aboard UK.
Yeah. So when I was reading about you, and I think you mentioned this the first time we met. You had sort of sponsored riders, right? You had brand riders who were Arab and European as well. Walk me through that process. Why did you is that an essential first step? You make the board, you make the brand, and then hopefully, is that how it works?
Yeah, and then so you make the board, you make the brand, and then you kind of have a team to spread the word about the brand, because also at the end you need content and what other content that you need for like a skate company. It's skate content. And so we started sponsoring guys from we had Mark Isa from Beirut, Maysam, who's Syrian living in Dubai. There was Evan, and there was like Saif and Ahmed Sahili in Jordan. And so the idea was to kind of, build like a really cool skate team from the region who grew up skating in the region, to support this local brand, regional brand, maybe not local.
So, which brings me to the last thing, the sort of last, or not last thing, but the next thing I want to talk about, which was eventually you decide not to be skating at Burger King, and you decide to create a place, right? Subcultures need spaces, right? They need spaces to actually thrive. They need roots. Walk me through, before you walk me through the background on Seven Hills, I think it might be worthwhile to play a little bit of the trailer. So this is a documentary about Seven Hills before we start talking about it.
I don't like labels. I think if you label something, you limit it. You build walls around it, and then that's it. This is what you are. You're here temporarily. You're supposed to go back home. But if you say, you know, you're people, then that's a greater understanding of people. I think they were living home. They were leading happy lives, and then wars happen, and they find themselves in a place where I either move or I die.
أنا اسمي إيهاب من السودان. لقد أتينا هنا لجوء.
That was the only option for them. We need to think about it that way. If you were in their position, what would you do? Would you stay in your place, or would you try to save your family and your kids and try to lead a better life?
So walk us through a little bit why you decided to start Seven Hills. How you even got this idea?
So you know, as a community of skateboarders in Amman, there was always this idea that, you know, we need a skate park, man. We need a skate park. We need a skate park. Even though we had Seven Hill, we had the Culture Street. There was still a need for a skate park. You know, because you know. You can go so far with Culture Street in terms of building the community, but if you have a space for the community, then it's going to be much easier for people to join. It's going to be much easier. It's just you know, better. It's just much better to have a dedicated place for
sure.
Skateboarding. And so we always had that idea of having a skate park in Amman, and we've always discussed it internally between you know the skaters, until one day I got there was this NGO called Make Life Skate Life. It's a German NGO, and what they do is that they go to different countries and they build skate parks in the places that need it. And so they hit me up and they're like, you know, yo man, we're interested in making a skate park in Amman. And of course, you know, I get really excited about the idea, and then we collaborate. And then what we did is that we approached the city of Amman, and we said, okay, you have a bunch of public spaces that are basically dead spaces. So what we're gonna do is take over one of these public spaces, raise the money ourselves, build a skate park, and then donate the park back to the city.
Amazing.
Of course, the city got excited about it. I mean, at the beginning, they had no idea what skateboarding was, or I mean, they had a vague idea of what skateboarding is, but we kind of it's tricky because they don't know much about skateboarding. But then how do you convince them of having the skate park built? But then again, you take the route of look, you're gonna have free infrastructure in a place. In a dead area, so you know, why not? And then you play along the politics of you know, of the municipality and all the bureaucracy and stuff like that. So the city got excited, and then we got the approvals on it. And so after that, we had the idea of how do we raise money for the project? I remember we needed $18,500 to build a 300 square meter skate park. And so there was a discussion between myself and the guys from Make Life Skate Life, is how do we go about raising the money? And so initially there was the idea of having corporate sponsorship for the park. The guys had done it before in India and Bolivia through they got the corporate sponsor to build the park. And so that was the initial idea. So so we approached corporate sponsors, and unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, they weren't really interested in the project because there wasn't, it isn't a big market for them in Jordan. And so we decided to take the grassroots approach, and then we created a crowdfunding campaign online. Initially, we were asking for $18,500. We were able to raise $23,000. And it was really it was really it was a moment for me, man.
Yeah, it must have been emotional.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all my life I was skating in Jordan. I was, you don't have that much support, and then for us to go on the internet and then ask for $18,000, which for me was like a lot of money back in the day, and I was really skeptical about it working. But then, the skate community globally came together, and we were seeing like photos of kids in Denmark donating for like a skate park they're never gonna skate. And then like people from everywhere in the world were donating for the skate park, and it was really emotional time for me. And so we were able to raise the money, and then we had volunteers come over, volunteer skate park builders and the professional skate park builders that came to Amman, and also like they also paid for their own flight, they paid for everything. So it was like, they're just doing it for the love of it.
This is what Skate Life does, right? They go to Sudan, they go to Palestine, they go everywhere, and they build these parks.
I mean, they did. So I'll get to that in a minute about Make Life, Skate Life. And so we got like a group of 18 volunteers, mostly from Europe, some from the States. So they came to Amman, we built the skate park. And the cool thing about the construction is that it wasn't like a fenced off construction. So the park was right next to a public school. And so the kids, whenever they're out of the school, they would come to the construction site and help us with the construction. The local community was really involved. Like I remember the imam and from the mosque and the people at the mosque came by one Friday, and they gave sweets out to everyone just for like to thank them for like building this thing. And like it's really interesting to see, because the local community also didn't know what a skate park was. But like when they ask you like what it is, and then you explain it to them, and then the next question is usually like, okay, how much is it going to cost for us to come in? And then when you say it's free, everyone is like, wow, what are you talking about, man? And then that kind of created this really cool community vibe. But not only that, like I mean, the kids in downtown Amman really they don't have much to do, and so having this construction site happen in their local park was really a big thing. And then having these group of 18 foreigners that are coming to their park for the first, I was like really interesting times for them. And so it's really cool to see the local community's involvement, and also like the families would send us food like for lunch. The local community was really, really involved, and that helped later on because as we learned is that it gave local ownership over the space. So
for sure,
the families and the kids felt like they owned the space. It's not like
for the people on the call who are not from Amman, can you describe what the community is, where it is, Amman, what neighborhood it is?
So it's in downtown Amman. So the selection of the park was in the center of the city, kind of. And the reason we selected the space is because it's easily accessible from East and West Amman. Like if you've ever been to Amman, Amman is a very hilly city. And so it's kind of easy if you're on a skateboard or like on like wheels, like it's easy to get to downtown. But there's also like this issue of class also within Amman. Like you have East Amman and you have West Amman, and West Amman is like the richer areas, and then East Amman is the poorer areas, and then downtown Amman is like in the middle of both East and West. And that really helped later on because the diversity that you see now in the park is really something that you don't see anywhere else. Like you have kids who are from downtown Amman and kids who are from East Amman skating with kids from West Amman, skating with kids from Sudan, from Yemen. It's a really like for me that public space of the skate park really shows the fabric of the city. It was.
You said something to me once, and it really opened my eyes. Once upon a time, you said to me that Amman is the most multicultural Arab city in the world, because there are so many refugees and displaced or migrant folks or from so many Arab countries, Arabic-speaking countries. And I remember you were saying there's tons of Iraqis and Palestinians and Syrians and Lebanese and Sudanese and Egyptians and Iraqis and Yemenis and it struck me as I'd never thought of that, but is that still true?
I mean, the thing is, like, it's true, though you don't see it really in the city itself, because, like, again, like the city is kind of segregated by class, kind of.
Yeah.
You have West Amman and then you have East Amman, and there's no common spaces in between that kind of host both East and West Amman. And so really, the classes are really not mixing. And I think there's like a huge classism problem in the city. And from my point of view, I think it's the issue of public space in the city. Like the lack of spaces in Amman is really a contributing issue to the classism in the city. But so you go to the park, and then, so first of all, it's in downtown Amman, so it's easily accessible from east and west. It's free, and then so you don't have to have money to come to the park and skate. Like we have a loaner program. So basically what we do is we bring out all the skateboards that we have, and then anyone can come and use it for free. And so you don't have to dress in a certain way. There's no agendas at all in the public space. And so and the thing is, like, skateboarding is very trendy now, and so a lot of the youngsters are really into skateboarding, and so the park is kind of being this cool spot to hang. And so having these kids from downtown Amman and from Jabal Amman and from Saifa and Jabal al-Taj and all that stuff, and having them in the park, and then you have the kids who are coming from West Amman, and they're coming to the park, and they're both skating together, and they're falling together, and they're laughing together, and that's kind of like melting all this classist bullshit that we have in the city. And then you see it's really the fabric of the city is really manifested in the park, like you mentioned. You have kids from Jordan, Palestine, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Somal, Sudan, kids who are like, we also have like a big migrant community, like kids who are from Egypt, and then from Sri Lanka, and all these ethnicities, and like everyone is mingling in the park, and it's really interesting to see the fabric of the city manifested in this very simple space, And what's really interesting, if you want to compare it, if you want to compare the skate park to Shara al-Thaqafi, so the kids that used to come to Shara al-Thaqafi are like kids from like the upper socioeconomic scale, because these are kids who were exposed to the Western lifestyle, and that's how they know about skateboarding. But then
they can buy a board.
Yeah, and they can buy the board. And then having a skate park that looks like a skate park, and once you see it, you're like, oh, this must be something for skateboarding. The kids that are coming to the park are kind of on the lower socioeconomic scale, who are really interested in skateboarding. And so this is a really interesting dynamic that my friend actually pointed it out to me.
Yeah. Before we move to the questions, I want to talk briefly about one of the elements of skateboarding and skateboard culture that I adore, which is photography. You are a professional photographer, and there's always, every single skate community in the world, there is always the photographer, right? And I just realized that, Jonah Hill, the actor, the director? Yeah, so I watched an interview, and he was like, yeah, I was a huge skater growing up, but I was always the guy with the camera. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. So can you just sort of walk us through some of your photography and how it intersects with, understanding society, explain it, sort of your view on society and your view on skateboard culture, and then we'll get to the quick fire questions.
Okay, so I started photography. So I started as I tried to be a filmmaker. I was really interested in videography and stuff like that. But then my friend, who was also skating with me in Sharat Thaqafi back in the day, he bought a film camera, and he's like, "Yo, man, you need to buy this. You need to get on this film stuff." And so I bought my first film camera, and from there I was like, "Okay, that's it." And it's also, I'm super lazy, so it's much easier than video, taking photos.
Yeah.
And so that got me into photography, and I used to not take it very seriously. Like I used to just shoot photos around and like walk around the city and shoot photos and explore. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of the same as skateboarding, because if you skate street, it's mainly about going around the city and finding new spots to skate and new challenges. And by that, you kind of like create new meanings for the objects that you find in the city. Like, like a handrail is not a handrail anymore. It's like this brilliant professor who writes about it, and he was talking about the handrail and like how the architectural elements are like the logic of these elements are flipped. Like the handrail is an object of safety, but through skateboarding it becomes an object of risk. And so
yeah, for sure,
logic is really flipped. And so through that, like I kind of like adopted the same mentality with my photography. Like I would walk around the city trying to kind of find stuff, really find compositions. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have like a solid idea of what it is I want to find. I just knew I was looking for something, and then once I found it, I will know what it is.
Yeah, they both have this, like, I mean, quite literally in the photography, you're capturing something, but in skating, you're also trying to capture, right? You're capturing this moment of success and recapturing these and reimagining the possibilities of these obstacles. And yeah, you look at a city completely different. Like you notice the slope of streets, you notice how fucked up a road is.
Yeah.
All right,
and it's the same thing with the camera, really. Like it changes the way you look at things, kind of. You know, it kind of gives you like, it lends you a new eye.
Yeah. All right, let's do some of the quick Q&As, and then we will jump to the chat with everybody.
Yeah.
So, what are you reading or watching right now?
I'm getting lost on the YouTube world. I'm like during quarantine, I actually started. I picked up a new hobby. I started playing the trumpet.
No way.
It's terrible. It sounds like a dead elephant is in my apartment. But according to my neighbor, I'm getting better. So I'm watching like music theory stuff and like trying to learn about music.
Nice. That's awesome.
I'm watching a lot of news actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would you love to shadow for a day, past or present?
That's a good question. I would say this jazz guy, Yusuf Lateef. Have you heard of him?
No, Yusuf Lateef. No.
Super good. I think he's from Detroit. But the way he plays is, it's incredible. I would like to see what's on his mind. To have a chat.
Okay, nice. Okay, what do most people misunderstand, or what do people most misunderstand about your work or your line of work?
That's an interesting question. Misunderstand about my work. So in terms of Seven Hills, like people kind of view it very basically. It's just like, okay, you know, children playing. But then within that, there's like so many layers that you can go deep into, like, you know,
of course.
In the public space. There's a lot that you can go into, and it's especially hard to convince like officials about this idea.
I think, for sure. That's what I would have guessed. Whose work do you admire or are inspired by? There's a lot, man. Too many to name. Everything really inspiring. I mean, if you look at it, everything you can get inspired from. Throw us a name so that we can look them up and learn about them.
Okay, there's this guy who did this film. It was also about like public spaces in New York. I forgot the name of the guy, but I can send the film on the chat. And it's really, really interesting. It's super cool. I like this was my most recent inspiration. In terms of photography, there's really a lot. Everyone is good nowadays. Like if you go on Instagram, everyone is like killing it with like photography and skateboarding, and there's so much going on.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Let's jump over to the Q&A. Jude, if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Thanks, Mohammed, for the talk. Seven Hills sounds like really a generous space, and I can't wait to visit it one day. My question, I was just wondering why you called your company or the brand Philadelphia.
That's a good question. Well, Philadelphia was the name of Amman in the Roman times, and it means brotherly love. And so we thought it was a perfect name for a skate company.
That is so cool. I didn't know.
Yeah. So it's inspired by Amman.
Nicholas, you're up.
This is an awesome way for me to start a morning, so thank you. You've done a lot of different things, from photography to the skating to the skate park and all of that. I wanted to know what your future plans are moving forward. Given that you've touched all of these things, do you have plans?
I'm kind of, I don't really have plans. Like I have a general idea of where I want to go personally and with work. And so like for Seven Hills, like we kind of have, so Seven Hills is within this public space that's 4,000 square meters big. We're only using 650 square meters out of it. And so the idea for the park, I mean, we're now shifting our focus on the public space itself. And so we want to develop this public space in a way where it's like a community developed space, and like any kind of small community can come in and like build their own stuff. And then we want to create this replicability of the model to other parks in the city, and like kind of like create this idea of like the DIY movement. You know, if you want something done, just do it yourself. And so this is in terms of like Seven Hills. In terms of me personally, man, I find like myself every couple of years, every 3 years, I'm like, you know, changing paths. Like I started as a software engineer actually. And then I switched to like filmmaking and then photography. And now I'm doing like this public space stuff. I really don't know what's going to happen. I wish I had the question. It's kind of scary actually now that I'm 34 and I have no idea what's going to happen soon, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, you're doing the right thing, so you'll kick butt at whatever. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you, Zakaria, for it's always interesting, you know, to see people who are building such spaces in Amman.
Thank you very
Especially
much.
that there's so little of them. So I was wondering if you felt like there's been a change in Amman over like the generations, now that there's a more digital generation that's more focused on, you know, playing with their iPads and tablets and stuff. Have you noticed any change with kids or other age groups? Are they still willing to go outdoors and skate, or, you know, just play outside? Has it impacted the park in any way as well?
Not necessarily. So the kids that are coming to the park are more of, so the usual users, let's say, of the skate park are kids who come from, let's say, downtown, and these areas. So it's more of on the lower socioeconomic scale. And so they don't really have the buying power to really get into like, you know, new phones and iPhones and tablets and stuff like that. And that's giving them the advantage of having the park, you know, and so they go out and explore stuff. Having said that, like a lot of the kids also that come to the park are still influenced by like the video games and stuff like that. And we've had like a couple of kids who stopped skating just because they want to play video games. But then again, they seem to come back all the time.
Deborah?
Hi, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, how has the space changed at all, if at all, from the virus? I'm very interested in public spaces, and at least here where we are, changed a lot. Who will come, what they do when they're there, how long they stay, etc. So I'm wondering if there's been a change or. Yeah.
So we had a pretty strict lockdown for about 2 or 3 months. I don't really remember. But Jordan is doing pretty well in terms of the number of cases. Like I think we haven't had cases in 7 days, and then when we do have cases, like 1 or 2 cases every day. And so the country is kind of coming back into like the usual business, and so the park is kind of being very active again. With the skate program, we're taking the proper measures with, like, you know, the social distancing and no sharing of skateboards and stuff like that, which is also like something that's against what we usually do, because we usually, I mean, the thing about a scarcity of resources that we have in the parks, for example, we only have 10 skateboards. And so we always ask the kids to share. And that's kind of like helping the kids understand that they all have the right to the space and the right to the skateboards. Now we're like asking them not to share. And so it's confusing them a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Some of what we have to do now is really counter to sharing and community. So thank you for answering that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, guys. If there aren't any other questions, I'll ask one last question, which is, where do you sort of see skateboard culture moving across the region right now? Culture sort of goes up and down. The global popularity of stuff like this goes up and down. But the sort of deep public acceptance, in theory, typically increases, and the tolerance for and the appetite for these type of stuff generally increases. If you're taking a look at 2020 versus 2000 or 2003, for sure it's increased. What do you sort of see for the next 10 years? What is your sort of prognosis? Or
I mean, there's a really a huge spike right now in the culture. Like a lot of kids are like really into skateboarding nowadays, and like the thing is, I think with social media, like the cycles are being faster. I think like at an all-time high right now, but I foresee that it might die also as quick as it spiked. I hope not, but then again, the thing with that is that you get the people who are really interested in skateboarding, and it's not only for looking cool.
Makes sense.
I mean, there's always been a skate scene in the Middle East. Like it does come and go, and it goes up and it goes down, but it's always been there. And so I think that it will still be there in 10 years, but maybe it will be like only the people who are the core skaters, let's say.
Well, Mohammed, thanks so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate your time. I deeply, deeply respect your work. I feel like the work you're doing is how societies change, or how sort of this, as you say, this class bullshit slowly breaks down. So thank you for your work, and thanks for taking the time to share your experience with us and your perspective. You are doing amazing work. Thanks so much for helping us and being so supportive over the years.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good luck with this terrific initiative.
Yeah. All right, everybody, and stay safe, stay well.